Thank you so much for doing this. So we're at the Knickerbocker Hotel. You're spending some time in New York. I want to ask about a lot of different issues. In January 2019, you said you were not running. And then 6 months later, you launch a campaign. So just to get inside your head a little bit, what changed?
Look, I watched the debates, and I was very, very worried that what was being discussed was policy differences. And they're important. You know, there is a real difference between Medicare for all and a public option. That people's different climate positions are different and matter. That people have different positions. But the real question is not what. The question is, how are we getting any of those things? I was very worried that we weren't going to level with the American people. That the question here is, how do we break the corporate stranglehold to get any of this stuff? Because if we do break the corporate stranglehold, we're going to get some version of all of it, and we're going to be able to guarantee a life, you know, a standard of living in America that is better than people understand. All the things we want, healthcare is a right, the kind of education you'd want your kids from pre-K through college, a living wage for Americans, one job's enough now, clean air and clean water. We're going to get all of that. But until we break the corporate stranglehold, we're not.
It starts with removing that.
Yes. And so I was very worried we're going to be talking about all these policy that are differences that are important, but that we can't get.
The day you launched your campaign, Senator Elizabeth Warren tweets out that, quote, the Democratic primary should not be decided by billionaires. What do you say to her, to your challengers who talk about your wealth and who say that you've essentially, in some ways, bought your way through the campaign trail or paid your way through?
Well, I say a couple of things. I mean, the basic question for everyone who wants to be the Democratic nominee is, what do you have to say, and are you a credible messenger of what you have to say? And what I'm saying is resonating with Democrats. I mean, my basic point is the government has failed, that corporations have bought the government, that the first step for us to get any of the policies we want, whether it's a new healthcare policy, the Green New Deal, you know, changes in government are going to be dependent on our taking back the government and getting back to government of by and for the people. And for the last 10 years, that's what I've done.
Is it fair to call yourself the outside if you have been so involved in the elections and you have donated hundreds of millions of dollars? I think the number is over 200 million. So is it fair to call yourself an outsider in that sense? Well,
I haven't donated the money. I think what I've done is I've started organizations that have done grassroots organizing. So, for instance, I started an organization called Next Gen America that has basically been organizing young people around the country. And in 2018, Next Gen America did the largest youth voter mobilization in American history.
Young people are important.
Not important. Super important. Super important. And we need the energy too.
Thinking just about, I mean, we've talked a lot about domestic issues, thinking more globally. What concerns you most about America's position in the world right now?
Mr. Trump has a theory that called America First. We have no allies. We have no coalition. We have no values. We're simply competing with other countries. It's all bilateral. It's all confrontational. And that is an idea that is absolutely wrong-headed, ineffective, and destructive. You know, if you think, first of all, that America First is what he calls it. America First was an organization originally in the late 30s and early 40s that was a Nazi sympathizer organization. So that can't have been a coincidence. Really. But the idea, when we think about how we've done well internationally, it's when we form alliances and relationships and partnerships with other countries and other groups of countries who share our values. Democracy-loving, freedom-loving countries around the world. So we work together to accomplish things.
Say you were to be president. How feasible is it to repair those damaged relationships, or the relationships that the agreements that Trump has pulled the U.S. out of?
Extremely feasible. I mean, there's going to be a question here in everybody's minds overseas is, does Mr. Trump represent America, or is he a one-time anomaly? I think it's the job of the next president, and as president, I would make this extremely clear. One time, mistake, never again. And so my point would be, that's one of the reasons I think we have to be so aggressive in terms of saying that and meaning it. Because actually, when I think about what he's doing in terms of his foreign policy, it's hard to imagine someone with a worse foreign policy. It's really hard to. But I will say this, choosing as your foreign policy a name from an organization that was a Nazi sympathizer organization is pretty indicative of exactly how, thoughtful you are.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.